Try to get started here and keep everybody on schedule. I believe we have a pretty full schedule for today, which will be the last meeting of 2022, which is kind of crazy. But we've got a couple things to get through here today, business wise and all that kind of good stuff. So with that, can we get a roll?
Sure. Chuck Bianca. Here. Commissioner O. Here. Jennifer Vanderbach. All right. Here. Beth Bigginson.
Yes.
Marcy Kress. Kelly Benson. Kimberly McCall.
Yep, just finished the body cavity search. Oh, clean, good.
Michael Deneen.
Here.
Pete Sargent. Here. Alex Frankie. Here. Brian Winter. Here. And Eric Hall. We did it good. Four is present.
Thank you, sir. We've got review of minutes and approval if we like them. Think everybody got to see them. Any comments? Additions, subtractions?
Chairman, motion to approve the September 21st meeting minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All opposed? So carried.
Let me go over a little bit of information for participation for our guests who are joining us virtually. To better facilitate our business, we ask that we will have a public comment period at the end of our meeting. Guests can address MAC verbally at that point. Until then, we ask that you chat in any questions that you may have as we have our speakers, and then we will read those questions when they are done with their presentation. When you, at the end, if you want to speak to us during the public comment period, just please chat in, and then we will have you unmute yourself. And while we are meeting, please continue to keep your microphone muted. And we are recording, so if you don't want to be seen, just make sure to turn off your camera. Unfortunately, y'all get to see me the whole time. And in fact, that's what the recording will show, is my big face. But so that's just the information we have for guests. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sorry for not getting to the housekeeping ahead of time.
Not a problem.
Do we have any other housekeeping? We're up for EPA updates.
We can do the EPA updates. So real quickly, I have a rule update. Michelle Mountjoy was not able to be here today, but she gave me a summary. So our solid waste fee rules and the solid waste incinerator rules were at the JCAR hearing on November 14th. We didn't receive any testimony, and their jurisdiction ends on the 26th. We will file those in December with a target effective date of January 1st of next year. For the scrap tire rules, we're working on responding to interested party comments. That we have a goal of filing the rules with JCAR in January of 2023. For the solid waste operational rules, we're preparing an interested party draft to be released early next year. The requirements are currently housed under 3745-2719, but will be reorganized into a new chapter. In terms of the solid waste groundwater rule, comments received on the early stakeholder outreach document, and we're beginning to review those suggested changes now. And then for the composting rules, early stakeholder outreach began last month, and comments are due on the 17th, which is tomorrow. The proposed amendments include one correction to the Class 2 siting criteria and 2 clarifications to the siting criteria for Class 1 and Class 2 composting facilities. So if you have questions about the rules, I can take your questions and I will pass them along to Michelle when she's back in the office to get them answered.
Just a comment.
Sure.
I just want to thank, we've been engaged on the scrap tire rules, and I just want to thank EPA for being proactive to reach out to our industry. Shannon and her team have been great to work with. We appreciate the ongoing dialogue that we have. Note that for the record.
Thank you, Alex. I'll pass that along to them. They'll appreciate that. Let's see. So real quickly, I'm going to have Matt give an update regarding our drop-off anti-contamination project that we're working on. Matt, do you want to?
Sure, yeah, the deadline for the what we call RFP or the grant applications is Friday. And I know was the last update on Monday, I saw there was one complete and like 7 or 8 that have started drafts in there, so we've been asking a lot of questions, and it's always restricted. We're only awarding up to 4 potential grants, so I think we're gonna have some good applications to review. Or I guess the second partnership does the initial review from that, and then will work with us to finalize them. And the awardees, the actual boots on the ground won't be happening until next year, so we're hoping to have all I guess the finalized applicants and awardees done by the end of the year.
Matt, what was the financials on that again? Is it matching, non-matching? What's for the?
Yeah, it was it's a 3-to-1. They have to supply $1 for every $3 per house.
At a max of 50,000? What was?
There wasn't an exact number on there, but I think it was 30. Yeah.
Thank
you, Matt. I forgot to put this on the agenda, but we need to elect officers. It's been at least a year since we've had officers elected, so Michael, do you want to lead that?
We elect the vice chairman and the secretary as a board.
Mike, maybe actually we should wait. Jennifer's on her way.
Yeah.
She's not here yet. Since she's current secretary, maybe we should wait till she gets
We'll wait till
here.
Jennifer gets here, but we do elect both of those positions. Jennifer is currently secretary. Steve is vice chair. If memory serves me correctly, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
When we go to talk about that a little bit more, when she gets here, we'll pull up the legislative report and the agenda and get that done as well, because we have to get that, or we're supposed to get that done here before we leave today, just in case something gets pushed. So, okay.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up and then wait.
You're fine.
I think that's all of the updates that we have. We have a few more things that we'll be presenting on at the end of the meeting, but we have several speakers that we wanted to go on and get on ahead of, so that they're not waiting around. So our first guest is Ren Brumfield. He's the recycling coordinator for the city of Cleveland. Several months ago, a couple meetings ago, people had requested that we hear from the city of Cleveland in terms of how the rollout of their new curbside program is going. We don't often have major communities rolling something out like this. So Ren has agreed to come and give us an update on what's going on there. Ren?
I am here. How are you?
Doing well. How are you? Thank you for being on.
I'm doing well. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you this pretty picture first. All right. There we go. Can you see that?
We can.
All right, good. So we're good. So guys, my name is Ren Brumfield. I'm the recycling coordinator for the city of Cleveland. And I'm going to just jump right into this report. All right. So Cleveland started its original recycling program in 2006. And by 2019, our reported contamination rate was 35%. In 2020, it was estimated to be 62%. And that's a big jump, but I question the lower number more than I question the higher one. But by that point in 2020, we couldn't renew our contract with the then recycling vendor, and we couldn't find anyone else to take their place. So the city didn't recycle for the next 2 years after we lost that in 2020. And I would also note that the recycling carts weren't retrieved during that program's hiatus, and that all the households in the city kept their blue recycling carts that they had originally. All right, so in 2022, we brought back the recycling program as an opt-in type program. The purpose of that being to help ensure that the participants who volunteered to join that program would be more committed to following the program guidelines and to reducing contamination. So we used a combination of mailings, news media, social media, and community meetings to get the word out. So by the end of 2021, we had enrolled more than 27,000 households out of about 150,000 total. So when these residents signed up, what we did was we gave them stickers to apply to their recycling carts, and you'll see in the pictures, you'll see the side of that can has that Recycle Cleveland sticker, and the illustration here that has the accepted materials, that's a sticker that's on top of the can to help remind people what's going on, what they need to put in when they open up their cart. So only the carts that are identified with these recycling stickers are the ones that are picked up by a recycling cart. The ones that aren't enrolled are currently being picked up by a trash truck until those people get signed up. And the plan is that sometime in the near future, in the next few months, we would retrieve those unenrolled extra cards and use them as backup stock for the program. So the emphasis now is really on the outreach to get those people who aren't signed up to sign up for the program. And just real quick, I'll point out in the picture here that you'll see that on that top picture, the one that has a sticker on it, the top is closed and all the other cans lids are open. And if you look at the bottom picture, this recycling can does not have a sticker. That lid is open on it and all the trash cans. So it's kind of a signal so that the foreman can know that the workers have passed down the street and that they've emptied the cans already, emptied the carts. So that one being closed with the recycling sticker on it, that lets us know it has not been picked up by that trash truck. All right. So most of those first 27,000 households to sign up were eager, they were waiting for a recycling program to start. So the larger number, everybody else, is going to require a more active engagement because some people had started using the blue cart that we let them keep as an extra trash can during that time we weren't recycling. And some lost trust in the city's waste services. And there were still others who weren't familiar with what can and can't be recycled. And they were hesitant to join the program because of a fear that the city would penalize them if they were to make a mistake. So to address those issues, we continue to speak at block clubs and at community meetings and to use media and social media to communicate about the program. And through our local public television station, we're making a series about the status of our recycling program. We have members of our city council actively promoting the recycling program within their districts that they're in charge of. And we're working with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District to offer their recycling ambassador training to residents with an added Cleveland specific session on that training. And the plan is to hold these at various locations in the city with a specific emphasis on representation from low participation areas. And then those people that are trained, these community-based recycling champions, will then meet regularly with the recycling coordinator, that would be me, and they would also represent the city's recycling program at community events. They would be answering questions and helping to sign up residents for the program. Additionally, our Division of Waste needs to continue performing, high quality service to continue to build and support public confidence in the program. So we're working on that. Meanwhile, while we're trying to build all this up and get people taught how to do things, we have crews at our transfer station who inspect each recycling load before it's allowed to be put on the semi-trailers that are bound for the vendor's MRF. So it serves a few purposes. It allows us to assess the degree of contamination coming from particular routes and to identify which contaminants are more prevalent in our mix, which helps to inform our education that we put out. And it also allows us the opportunity to divert some of the larger contaminants and the tanglers away from what goes to the MRF. So we currently, as of October, have more than 50,000 households enrolled in the recycling program. By the end of October, we did an audit with our vendor, that's Rumpke, of about 1 week's worth of our city's recycling. And that showed that we now have a contamination rate of just more than 15%. And that's really, really encouraging. I think it shows that starting out intentionally and smaller has given us a solid foundation to build on. And by no means do I think that means we can go on autopilot, though. So, because there's potentially another 100,000 households out there that still need to understand that they are affected by this program as well, and that their participation is important to make it work. So we need to bring them into this program. We need to teach residents that waste reduction is the ultimate goal of our program. And I want to know that recycling is only one of several methods that we can use to achieve that goal. And with that, that's what I have to say, and I will take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ren. Does council have any questions for Ren? Yes, Kimberly McConville.
Thanks, and I'm so happy to hear that you guys are back on track with recycling or well on your way. So when you said 100,000 additional households, are those single family houses? And the other part of my question is what are your plans for multi-family housing recycling?
That's kind of a collective number. The city services single family homes and multiple units up to 4. So of all those that that we would potentially service. There are approximately 150,000. I don't have the exact number of households, but it is a mix of those two. And as far as multifamily, I have gotten some information from our solid waste district. I've talked to people from Atlanta in some of my travels as I'm talking to peers to kind of get some ideas for better ways to approach multifamily homes out here, apartment units and such. We don't have, we haven't gone into a big program where we're going to launch that yet, but I'm trying to work out what those details will be so we can get more participation from them.
Thank you.
Another question, Steve Sargent. How are you marketing? I don't know this answer, I should, but the plastic, are you marketing ones and twos? Are you marketing containers with small lids? What's your message to the consumer?
What we have been saying is those individual things. So it's plastic, cups, bottles, tubs, and jugs. We're telling them that your plastic, cups, bottles, tubs, jugs, put those in there because I want them to really identify with what it is. If we just give them numbers, then they're going to throw all the clamshells that have ones on it and all that in. And I let people know that the numbers are really to tell people on the next level, the vendors, how to group stuff. I like to liken it to when people separate laundry before they wash. That's how I've gotten them to really understand that those things give you some information about how they need to be processed, but it doesn't necessarily say that this vendor will process those. So I want to make sure I stick with, these numbers, not these numbers, but these particular things are what you're looking for. That way I don't have them hunting for numbers.
Eric Coleman, I have a quick question. Related to your growth trend, it looks like, 8 months or so, you've managed to double the amount of participation. What is your end goal? What's the realistic number that it's going to look like in Cleveland? And when do you think you're achieving that?
Right now, that's a hard question to answer. Just because we've come from such a place where we had no recycling at all, and there's still that gap where I'm trying to make sure we get people's trust, that we show them that we're doing what we need to do. I think that it will grow exponentially once we hit that tipping point there. So I think realistically, if we could get to 75, 80,000, that would be great. That would be really, really good. I would love to see every eligible household, participating, but I don't know if that's realistic in the short term. Long term, possibly, but I think within the next, I don't know. I think it would take maybe a couple of years, 2-3 years to get to that point, but it's all a guess right now.
Yes, Beth.
Hi, Ron, it's Beth.
Hey, Dad. I heard you back there.
I know. Could you explain to the group, per the contract, you talked about this initial audit, but could you explain to them how in the contract that process will, be a reoccurring event and how that provides, you all some transparency and some educational guidance?
Yeah. So our audit that we did, we worked in the contract that would happen soon after we started the after we started the contract with them. There was a little bit of a delay just getting it organized, but as we did this, what's going to happen is they're going to use these numbers as the baseline for everything going forward till we do the next audit. We're going to do them at least annually. So then that will set our percentages for our mix, our mix of components, in our recycling, and they'll apply the going rates to that. Unless we see some kind of trouble issue or anything that we need to do another audit and check our balance, check our contamination rate and all that, then that should carry through. I don't know, Beth, was that a good enough explanation? I don't know if I did well.
You did just fine.
All right.
They're using a blended rate, so they're resetting their composition annually along with their pricing. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we as the district were really excited pertaining to Cleveland's contract is they required their bidders to let them know what materials they would take in recycling and their end markets. And so that allowed in their evaluation to really look at, as Brent talked about, they're talking about specific, tubs or bottles. And so the Cleveland had a great opportunity to evaluate that against the pricing. Who offered, the best medley of materials to be collected for their residents.
Exactly. And what was important also was the fact of what they did with glass. Because everybody would say, all the big people that bid on this contract said, we will take glass, sure, we'll take all your glass. But then what we found out is that, well, the one company that we chose has a whole process where the glass will actually get processed and go back to vendors that are located within Ohio or close to Ohio. The others didn't. So even though they would take that glass, it wasn't going to be processed fully. It wasn't going to end up actually recycled. So that was important in the decision. Yeah, that was very important.
I'm sorry, it's Eric Palmer again. I'm just curious, the auditing system, is that a hand sort or is that a full system audit they perform?
It was a full system. It's Rumpke is the company that we're dealing with. So they took 22 tons of our recycling down to the Cincinnati MRF. And I went down there and just watched the whole process, watched everything go through, got a real good look at, what are we recycling, what percentages we're doing it, what does it look like as it comes through. It really helps me to talk to people about what not to do, what to do, and just to see how it trends. Really useful to go down and do that full audit.
We have other questions from council? No. Well, Ren, we really appreciate your taking the time to present. I think you heard from the questions. People are really interested in what's happening in Cleveland, so we appreciate your being here with us.
Well, thank you.
I apologize here. I have to retrieve a presentation. So I'm going to open up my email here and download that presentation. So just give me a moment here. I know I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off this morning and wasn't paying attention to my email. So what was that? I know it is, isn't it? Given all the struggles I have with technology.
I have a question I didn't ask, and if Rent's still here, Beth, maybe is this intended to stay as a opt-in program? Or are they gonna try to get it full blown again? And if it's an opt-in program, are they gonna have people re-opt in after a certain period of time?
Ren, you
The
still there?
plan, I'm still here. The plan is not to have them opt in again. It's, okay, you opted in, you have the cart, we know that you're recycling and you're going to keep recycling. I think that one thing that I identified as part of the problem that we had with the original program is that there was just a lack of communication with the residents about the program, about what's going on, how we recycle. So the idea is that once they're in, they're in. We will continue to educate and to be in touch with everybody so that we don't have that fall off of knowledge which happened from the original program. And I would like to see it go to a program where it's just where everyone's in. I think what we'll do is we'll do the opt-in for a while so we can really get a handle on how we do this, make it just, I want it to be just what we do in Cleveland, how we operate. And I think once we get past a certain percentage of the residents, and I don't know exactly what that mark is at this moment, but once we get past a certain percentage, I will definitely argue for just making it a citywide thing. I would like to. In fact, I kind of wanted a citywide thing in the beginning, but we have to get there slowly. And I think that this audit and the percentage of contamination and good stuff kind of shows that it was smarter to start small. And it kind of shows me some of the perceptions, some of the things going on, how people are looking at recycling, and where specifically we can educate to do better. So I think that, I would like to see it be the whole city, but it's going to take time.
Ready, Ernie?
I am. Thank you. Thanks again, Ren. We appreciate it. Next up on the agenda, we have Jim, and it's Horrocks, Jim, is it Horrocks? He's with Freepoint Ecosystems. He's their Vice President of Advanced Recycling Operations. We've been hearing a lot about alternate technologies for managing plastics, and Jim is here to give his company's strategy for what they're doing with alternative technologies. So thank you, Jim, for coming.
First of all, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ernie, Chet, Steve, for the opportunity for me to come out and share some information. I understand there's been a bit of interest lately in advanced / chemical recycling. So I'm going to try on behalf of 3 Point Ecosystems to just update you with some information, not only industry-wide, but also specifically what we're doing here in Ohio. Really cool also to be here. When yesterday was National Recycling Day. So, I see a lot of people wearing green. I actually see a lot of old colleagues that I haven't had an opportunity to visit with in a while. So that's pretty cool. That's me. My prior life, I worked for One Key here for 6 years, where I met the greatest mentor of my life, Mr. Steve Sargent. It was a fast 6 years, certainly learned a lot, not only about recycling, but about the Midwest and about a lot of our vendors, our suppliers, the networks, logistics, and partnering with all of the different industry players. Prior to that, I was with WM. Eric, familiar to you? In Philadelphia MRF. Yeah. So got a good grounding actually with WM because prior to taking over the MRF, I was actually hauling, transferring landfills. So I kind of understood how all of it worked.
Am I not sharing my screen?
Great teacher.
I'm not sharing my screen. Am I?
Great company. I can't speak highly enough of either company. So.
Hey, Jim, can you hold on just a moment? Again, here's my technology thing. I'm not sharing my screen, so. Sure. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, now we're good. Thank you, whoever chatted in and told me. Okay, you ready for me to go, Jim?
Okay, so start with a little bit of who we are. 3 Point Commodities is our parent company. They're up in Stamford, Connecticut. I was up there just last week at a meeting. They're primarily engaged with commodities, trading, logistics. They're global, and they really don't own assets. We're their first foray into asset ownership and operations. 20 billion annual revenues. I think what's most impressive is that on a daily basis, they move the equivalent of over 4 million barrels of energy globally. So they have obviously a lot of experience, supply chain, logistics, access, and commodity in the energy spaces. So they're our parent, and we are wholly owned subsidiary of 3 Point Commodities. 3 Point Ecosystems is the name of our company. So the current plastic life cycle, we probably all know this. This is what really got me interested when I was still at Rankin. And we were talking a lot about this current linear economy. And the problem is a lot of plastic is still ending up to all levels. Not good on a number of bases, but oil extraction, then we go to refinery, they turn into petrochemicals, and then molding processes where it actually is turned into plastic. Out to a brand owner, they're making an awful lot of packaging, other things for the consumer marketplace. Then it goes to a mechanical. So again, big difference is mechanical recycling is what Rumpke does, what WM does. What your large haulers do that also have recycling groups. What 3 Point and others in our space do, we're advanced / chemical recyclers. So we pretty much live on, we'll see it more on the next slide. We pretty much live on what a MRF doesn't want to take, which is all of those polymers that are not really good for commodity recycling. They don't have a market for, that are going to wind up in the landfill. We'll see some examples later, specifically what we're talking about. So what we're doing is that we've taken that linear economy and we've turned it into a circular economy. So now everything is in a closed loop, and it truly is kind of a life cycle for plastic. Instead of burying it back in the ground, we're actually reusing it. Many of these polymers can be used indefinitely. So Recycling objectives, this is no secret. Our waterways and our oceans are a mess globally. So obviously, we want to try and keep the source of those issues from occurring in the first place. We want to leave oil in the ground. It also reduces fresh water consumption for the current fracking that's going on. That, as we all know, that's an extremely water intense process. Transition to a low carbon, and again, we talk about the whole circular economy. And then finally, it does create additional recycling infrastructure, which all of us can take advantage of. We're in the process now of hiring a lot of people to join us at 3 Point Ecosystems, as are some of our competitors. Some of the environmental benefits, we just touched on this a little bit, but advanced recycling. The thing that really stands out to me, this is just one 3 Point Ecosystems facility, such as the one that we have in Hebron, and we'll take a close look at in a second, is a greenhouse gas emissions comparison. When you're doing with all of the derived oil versus and with the fresh water, you just see such a fraction of what is utilized in our processes compared to what is going on right now. So this is average, from an average of us consuming about 266 tons per day plastic. This is kind of the yield. And if we look at, again, the waste plastic benefits, that gives you some numbers around what we talked about earlier. Extending landfill life, that's obviously very important here in Franklin County, actually everywhere. Greenhouse gas benefits, almost 50% reduction overall. We're going to leave 18 million barrels of oil in the ground over the facility life cycle. So one Hebron saves that much oil, which is about 250,000. We can supply about 250,000 people with fresh water because we're not pushing them in fracking. So what are we interested in? What are we not competing with the mechanical and traditional recyclers for? These are primary examples of what we consider good feedstock. We are taking residue bales from the various mechanical recyclers, things that they would normally take off their single stream lines and send to landfill. We're taking them now. And there's a lot of good olefin material in that residue today. So we welcome that. We're going to continue to welcome that. We have a lot of arrangements with Rumpke, NWM, and a lot of other haulers in the Midwest and all over the country to be able to do that. Because we don't believe something that's already been handed and presented to the recycling industry for recycling should ever go back. With a few exceptions. I mean, you've got some things that are just very difficult. You know, organics, that kind of thing, which really require a special niche off of the side of chemical and something. 3-7 bales, 1-7 bales, as a lot of you in the room here know, what happened in the last 60 to 90 days with the value of 3-7 bales, plastic. We're all living pretty high in the summer, and the bottom's falling out. So we're obviously seeing more interest than ever because what's the alternative? Steve knows this all too well. Too many in the mechanical industry, mechanical recycling, will turn to landfill 3-7 bales if they cannot find a place to sell them or get rid of them. We don't want that to happen. So that gives us obviously another opportunity. Co-extruded films, polystyrenes, styrofoam, I'm not allowed to say that until they haven't gotten approved. On manufacturing waste, I guess I did say. Packaging scrap, plastic labeling, bubble and shrink wrap. Those are all, I can remember, in being in the mechanical space, those are veins to my existence in a mechanical, in a single stream work. So it's amazing what I never used to like to see. Now I'd love to see in my new facility. So you can see this isn't competition with mechanical recycling. This is a supplement. This is an auxiliary to what we already have in place in the industry. So how exactly does this advanced recycling work? this is a very simple version. And what I can tell you, this is the infeed side. Everything in Hebron up to here is actually under roof. Okay, so trucks come in with consumer and industrial plastic waste. Drop it off. Right now, we're accepting bales, gaylords, pallets. Then we're gonna resort all the material and we size it. We'll remove contaminants such as glass, metal, organic materials. And we're actually looking for avenues to be able to collect that in quantity and then be able to move that to the chemical. Then the material gets densified, so it becomes great feedstock for energy. But it's shredded prior to that down into I call them like about the size of a paradise. That's what one of our cubes looks like. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe a rectangle, but very high density. That again allows us to present it to pyrolysis in kind of what the pyrolysis can exceed at when it goes to extract that condensate. So that's all done. The other beauty of densification is it makes the material much more economical to transport. So we're not necessarily tied to having to have the pyrolysis in the same location that we have the plastics process. Hebron is one example we call the supercenter, where all of it is together. However, we've looked at hub and spoke throughout the country now, and we're actively developing some locations where all we're going to do is process plastic and get it into the densified cubes. And then some locations where all we're going to do is pyrolysis, which is to take that feedstock and convert it to hydrocarbons. So then the pyrolysis starts, and that's like magic. This is a kiln or a reactor, whatever you want to call it. We take and load the densified plastic cubes into these kilns. We heat them up to about 1200 degrees in an oxygen-free environment, and then evaporation begins. There's no fire, there's no flame. The evaporation then is captured, condensation, and then we start to refine it. We run it through a bunch of filters. Originally, I can tell you that in Hebron, we had planned to make 3 cuts of hydrocarbons. We were originally going to do a naphtha, a diesel fuel, and a very heavy crude. And I tell people it's kind of like if you've ever toured a brewery or know how beer is made. I'm talking about the big ones, like the craft. Like you go to Budweiser, in a Budweiser tank, the top is reserved for like really high grade Bud brands. That's where usually the alcohol content's a little higher. The beer's a little lighter. There's less impurities in it. You get to the middle, that's where your Bud is. You get to the bottom, that's kind of, some of your light beers, your lower, your cheaper brands, maybe your Busch beer. Hope I'm not offending anybody, but that's how I understand it. So naphtha's right at the top of that, right? Naphtha's, we can mix that with anything. And then certainly diesel, we've all heard a lot about diesel fuel prices lately. And then a crude grade. What we've since done since then is there's such demand for synthetic pyrolysis oil that we've decided we're just going to make one pyrolysis blend and focus on as large a quantity of that as we can get. I'm happy to report this. I don't know if this is public information, but I don't think it's confidential. We've entered an agreement with Shell Oil. They've already purchased all of our offtake for the foreseeable future. In fact, Shell's in town today. That's where I was right before this meeting. Yeah, they are very interested and they're great partners for us. So anyway, and this is how it works in Hebron as well. The end product is then we put it in, instead of separate tanks, we have, again, we're gonna have one big tank. And then we're on rail access out in Hebron, and we'll be loading up tank cars. We project to ship about 10 tank cars every 24-hour period. So that's about 1,500 barrels of oil every 24-hour period. So there's a little bit of other commentary in the bottom here. Currently, over 75% of all plastic waste is landfill. We want to move, obviously, we want to move that line, as do us. Okay. This is our site out in Hebron. This is in the Newark Industrial Park. If anyone is familiar with this area, there's woods back here. 79 runs north-south over here. It's a huge industrial park. This is for anyone, again, with a lot of knowledge of past history. This is the old Walker Manufacturing Building. They used to build mufflers here. This is what this building was originally designed and built for. That was probably 60 years ago. So, since then, NFI, which is a big logistics company, is occupying the north part of it. We're occupying all the south. We are just about ready to pick up additional space. NFI has actually announced their intent to leave, and we're going to pick up some additional space up in the northwest corner. So we'll have a total of about 400,000 square feet for both storage of plastic and for the actual plastics processing. So again, this is what it looks like today. Across the street from us, up the top, is Clean Harbors. Great operation. Had an opportunity. I've gotten to know them very, very well. There's a certain comfort about going in to a location that's across the street from Clean Harbors, because you know that whatever they've asked for and got permitted, you're not asking for anything that bad. Right? So by comparison, and they also have some really cool advanced fire suppression systems, the whole 9 yards, because they deal with hazardous liquids. And they do it very, very well. It's like they say, when you call Clean Harbors, you don't ask how much. They're there to make the problem go away. So we're also looking at a partnership, as you can see down here to the south. This is the rail. It does have direct access to our site. We're not going to use that, however. This is the short line GW Railroad, the Genesee, Wyoming. Clean Harbors came to us about a year ago and said, we have been dying to get access to this line. So what you'll see in the next photo in a minute is that we've already designed for this rail spur to come up here. This is all our land out here. Currently it's wooded. And we're going to continue it all the way over to Clean Harbors. So we've got a great partnership with them. They would rather put their material on the rail than actually right now they're draining it to Columbus and all the way to Columbus and putting it on the rail here. So think about the savings right there. Lovely. The total footprint here is about 550,000 square feet. It sits on 40 acres. So again, it's about 10 minutes north of I-70 at the Buckeye Lake exit. So really logistically sound as far as the location for Stanford Rail. Right now, all of our raw materials, our plastic scrap comes in via truckload. We're not ruling out in the future that we may actually begin to receive plastic scrap via the rail as well. So this is what it's going to look considerably different. Again, here's that open space you saw in the last picture. As I mentioned, all of the pyrolytic activity is going to occur outside. All of the plastics processing is going to occur inside. This is the NFI space right now. Here's the loading docks where the trucks are currently backing in. We have begun receiving material. We have several thousand tons of material on hand. The good news is once we do start the pyrolytic operation outside, that's only about 23 days of feedstock. We're going to be consuming 300 tons a day in feedstock. So even though it looks like a lot, right now Steve's been out there. We know it's going to go quickly once we fire those kilns up, and we're excited. So again, the process is the plastic comes in right now. It's in bales, gaylords, and on skids. We've been storing it over here. We've been putting a lot of the gaylords missized over in this area, keeping this area clear. We're partnering with Van Dyke, who I'm very, very familiar with in the past. Actually, Van Dyke had a system in Philadelphia. Great partners, very knowledgeable in actually the plastics processing. So what will happen is all these bales will come in, and up front here, what we have to do is we'll break them. We have an automated bale breaker, which actually collects the steel wire from the bale, which is worth a lot of money right now too. Like I said, our intent is to use everything that comes into us, and then liberate that material. Material will go to a pre-shred, which is where we'll reduce it down to 12 inches minus. So, and then we'll sort it. We'll run it through ballistic separators, which sizes it. So 2D versus 3D. I don't know if you've ever seen them, they're like paddles. We're getting away from the old wheels with the discs because they just jam constantly, right? That's how we used to do it. So now we're using this new fairly new technology, ballistic, which we call ballistic separators. I've seen them work. They're terrific. I wish I had them in my prior place. And then we're going to have 5 optical scanners, which is going to simply separate the plastic that we want, which again, you know, we're not necessarily interested in PET because there's no olefin in it. And plus we know that on the mechanical side, there's an interest in PET. So we're really looking at 2s, which is HDPE. No one wants 3s. We're going to talk about PVCs. 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s. That's what we take. So these opticals will make sure that it's one of those grades and eliminate any other fiber, paper, organics, textiles that might be in that plastic feedstock. So it comes out, we run through a secondary shredder, make everything down about 1 inch or less, and then we're going to densify it right here. So we've got 4 densification heads. We take and mash this flaked plastic. It's all mixed up through some major extruders, gradually reducing the size until we get down to that 1¼ inch cube that we run. The way we get those is by running it through a die at the very end. That die is also heated, so we sear those cubes so they don't just, you know, want to expand again. They're seared shut. So like I said, they're very, very dense at that point. Not very dissimilar than the nuts. And then we're going to store all that over here because the plastic operation is going to run Monday through Friday from about 20 hours a day, 2 shifts, 100 hours a week. Whereas the kiln operation, the pyrolysis outside will be 24/7, 365. So we'll be continuously out running the consumption ability of the kilns. So we'll build up enough feedstock to carry them over the weekend. Also, as many of you know, plastics processing equipment is very maintenance intense. So we have to have time to be able to work on that equipment. And you know, you can get a lot done in 4 hours a night, which we're already planning. But some things you need a good 48-hour stretch. You need to replace a motor, a belt, that kind of stuff. So that was intentionally planned, that schedule. Material then is going to go through a drum feeder and up into a conveyor. You can't really see it well here, but then it goes through and open to the wall and outside. Here's our 2 kilns. They're coming from Germany. Unfortunately, this took about a year out. They're obviously very highly specialized equipment. So these are the actual the heating units, the combustors to provide heat for these kilns to get that temperature up to 1200 degrees. This is a dynamic process where we're constantly loading the kilns and materials constantly coming out. But the kilns, in addition to the condensation, also generate is about 15% what we call ash chalk. It's very similar if you have a purple grilled home. When it's all done and cool, that's what char looks like. It's very innocuous. You'll also find sometimes little tiny bits of metal that'll get through that obviously won't be condensed, that won't be gasified. So we're going to have a mechanism where we actually have roll-up trucks work underneath these kilns, empty the char. We figure about 7 or 8 tons a day. We've actually been talking to Suburban Landfill about alternative daily cover opportunities and other things that we're looking to do to be able to make that char somehow usable. And there's technologies that are coming on board out there also that are looking at densification of the char. And, you know, again, similarly, with a few small additives, maybe being able to build up some BTU value in it and turn it into char.
2 simple questions.
Sure, sure.
So is that kind of how you're handling the contaminants? Really, they're getting baked off?
Yeah, well, we're not pulling out in resin.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it.
But the good point is, Eric, that by the time the material gets to the densification, it's pretty clean.
It's gone through the ballistic side.
Yeah, and also, and I left a lot of this out, I kind of glossed over.
Sorry.
There's a wall, no. There's a wall air system in there, so it's blowing off light material and fines, which is your fiber, your dust, your grit, that kind of stuff, any little glass particles. And there's also a high power magnet. And we're probably gonna look at maybe also adding a eddy current if we see it. Hopefully, we don't see it. We shouldn't see any of it. Sometimes we will. We're also gonna have about a dozen volume control sorters, manual sortation, so people will be pulling that stuff off. And again, we'll see how well the mechanical recyclers do with their residue bales and the 327s by what we collect that typically a mechanical recycler wants, such as UBCs, such as steel.
Yeah.
Right? So we're gonna be able to collect that. If it turns out to be a lot, we're gonna create a separate bunker. I'll buy a baler and we'll start selling that back into the typical mechanic. So over here, we already talked about this. Don't ask me exactly what all this stuff does. It's, that's not my specialty. But again, you're looking at the condensers, filters, collectors, and then the material from, actually at this point, it's liquid. Okay, up there, that's a fire water tank in the upper northeast corner. Here's the preliminary storage tank. Then we're going to pipe the hydrocarbons over here. These three will become probably go down to two larger ones, and then you can see we're extending the rail all the way around to the northeast. So we'll actually, right in this area, be loading all of the pyrolysis oil we generate right onto the rail right here, where the Genesee of Wyoming, they service this track on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which is why we have the storage tanks, because we're going to be generating, like I say, 10 cars every 24-hour period. So it's kind of a logistics challenge to schedule that. I can say we're very fortunate with our relationship with the Shoreline. It's not like if we run out of cars on a Thursday, we call them, they come out of Newark, that's where their hostel yard is, and they come and they take care of us. So, and then the rail goes back out, gets sent back up to Newark and gets put on either the Norfolk Southern or CSX, depending on where we're sending that oil. Like I said, right now it's all pretty much earmarked for Shell. So it'll be going southbound on Norfolk Southern, probably down to the that's just pretty, a quick overview. I wish it was that simple, but just, talking with Ernie, wanted to provide you with just a quick kind of a down and dirty. So I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Jim, I represent the beverage industry, so thank you for not taking our PET. We want it. We want all of it. This is so interesting, and our industry does not have a position on chemical recycling. I personally think there's room for everybody. But playing devil's advocate for a minute, why do people freak out about this technology? Why is there so much resistance in some sectors of the environmental community who liken this to incineration, and they're saying it's the same thing, and people freak out? Help us
It's a
understand.
great question. And I can tell you from my experience, my prior experiences. My opinion is, I remember giving so many tours in the Rumpke North on field that and to school children. And they would come in, and I love doing that. I would do a lot of it personally, even though we had people in our communications department. And then we get together in a room like this afterwards, and a couple of the young students raise their hand and say, my daddy says that recycling is a myth, and that Rumpke just comes around and picks everything up and then dumps it all in the landfill. I said, well, now it's your job, since you've seen it's not a myth, to go and educate others. I think that's really the same message, is because waste to energy has seen such headwinds lately, and also, received, faced a lot of obstacles, I guess. Somehow we're tied to that. And there's some other things we got to stop using phrases like, a lot of people continue to call the kilns reactors. They're not really, people think reactors, they think we're doing something atomic. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But when people see kind of the basic presentation I gave and the idea of the circular economy, I don't really understand. Eventually we want this plant and every one of our pyrolysis operations to be energy neutral, so that what it's generating is actually running itself when we get to that point, where we're taking the energy that's coming off of the combustors, reusing it in the process. Obviously, a startup doesn't. So But yeah, I think there's still some animosity out there about waste energy. Is that really recycling? The other thing that I think a lot of people get confused about, and I can't necessarily address it myself, is we are producing hydrocarbons. Some other participants in this industry are actually doing this, but refining it down to different kind of offtake pellets or highly sterilized plastics or resins. That's kind of a different thing. So, we know what we want to accomplish with our process.
I think one of there's a lot of controversy here. But I think one of the things, the way I try to look at it is that your industry, which is private, is reacting to what's already in the stream. If that stream changes by the consumer choice, legislation, whatever, you probably will be looking for another job somewhere. I mean, they may not be in business. That's what I'm saying. There's a risk here by what you're doing. If there's a change that needs to happen, then the change needs to be to get that material out of the stream before it gets into these landfills. Because it's going in by the thousands of tons a
Yeah.
day.
That's the other thing I tell people. Steve, that's a good point. Just go down to Swaco and take a tour.
Oh.
It'll break your heart. And not just plastic, hard.
So I think that your industry has taken a risk. There's no
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
You're
we
reacting to
feel,
what's
and
there.
this is not necessarily, this is not just a domestic engagement. This is a global. We've already got plans in Europe. They're actually further along in Europe than we are. And governments globally are,
And that's a way higher bar to clear,
yeah, it is.
environmentally speaking.
Right. So, it's like Steve said, hey, I'd love for me not to have a job doing this. Because that means we're effectively using all the material that we're producing, right? Do I ever see that happening? No. All I can do in my lifetime is trying to get closer to it.
Why?
Because I'm here. No, Ohio was, I think, quite a while ago. Maybe Steve can even speak to this. Ohio is very, very rich in, actually has great recycling footprint already. Ohio is already generating a lot of scrap plastic. And when I say scrap plastic, I don't mean trash. I mean a lot of mechanically recovered scrap. Not just plastic, obviously. But we looked at the kind of the array, the footprint just in the Midwest, and specifically in Ohio. And we said, this is really where we want to be. We want to be close to the source. So we've got, we've had great conversations with Swaco. Obviously, great conversations with Suburban. Some of the landfills, the landfill avoidance. We're looking domestically also at putting some of our spoke sites, which are going to be the generators of the plastic, right at the landfill sites, where we can pick off the MSW stream inbound and pull as much plastic out as we can. But Ohio is also, as you know, logistically, it's a perfect state. I mean, and Columbus is probably the perfect logistic hub of a perfect state. I mean, what 70% of the population is less than 24 hours from here. So, I mean, all of the modes that we need to use and want to access are going to be here. And also very favorable business conditions. There's just a great supply potential feedstock here.
Just curious, we see it starting to pop up and is this a result of some of the, the issues in China and getting cut off on the
Absolutely.
markets?
Absolutely, that's perfect.
This is kind of opening up.
I don't know if you remember back in the day.
Oh, I do.
Yeah,
Still right years.
You remember probably when I was at WM and you were at WM, I can say Philadelphia was shipping mixed plastics by the container load to China.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't mixed plastics. It was, let's be honest. There was not a huge effort to try and clean up that stream. We just wanted to get rid of it. So no wonder the national fence came off. They finally realized, I'm talking Philadelphia alone was probably shipping 20 to 30 containers a day to China. So, the national fence came along. We all knew the national sword was coming. I mean, it was only a matter of time. So by then, however, national sword really affected fiber. We pretty much have lost all of the global markets for scrap plastic. They had already said none of us want anything to do with it. So we had to become more reliant. At the same time, a lot of domestic municipalities are looking at this and saying, we're gonna start forcing manufacturers to use a certain percentage of recycled material. And you put those forces all together and boom, this is where we're at right now. And those, I don't think those standards are going away. And then, of course, the final piece is, that we are running out of landfills. Yep, I mean, my wife is a New England native. I lived up there for 15 years. You want to see restrictive, I mean, you can't even say the word landfill in a lot of discussions. Those people just freak out. So what are they doing there? They're railing all their trash out to Ohio, but same in New York City. But again, in those population centers, there are no landfills. My first assignment with WM was up in North Jersey. They've closed more landfills than they've allowed to open the last 20 years. They're now railing all their trash either to the WM Rose facility in Eastern PA or out here to Ohio. So it's an issue. So think about, again, the cavalcade that creates, all those diesel engines, all the trucks that are just, exacerbating the whole problem. Just to move trash.
This is the first facility I'm gathering.
This is the first one.
Is this a big one or is this kind of a prototype and plans
This is
to
a
get bigger?
prototype which will represent both our plastics processing and our hydrocarbon processing, which is pyrolysis.
Okay.
So future, we're not sure. We're going to continue to do this. Number one, it's pretty hard to get permitted.
Mhm.
You have to find exactly the right place. We're very fortunate. We have the right place for this. Logistically, it's got to make a ton of sense.
Mhm.
I mean, this is a very capital intense investment.
Mhm.
So again, that's why we've chosen to be flexible. I can tell you, we're looking at, we've actually have signed agreements already with a location in Georgia, location in Virginia, location in Arizona, location in very, very southern California, in Reno, Nevada, something in the upper Midwest, between Chicago and Minneapolis. These are already, like I said, a lot of these sites are under.
What's your supply radius? Am I saying that correctly? So how far do you think you're gonna pull? Out of
Right now,
miles?
Yeah, right now, we're pulling from fairly close radius.
Mhm.
We are actively, that's our origination team, are actively talking to anyone in the country. In fact, even globally, we've actually had conversations with people in Canada. I mean, how it can be effective to transport shipments of scrap plastic, I'm not sure. But maybe there's an opportunity for us to do something up there in partnership. Like I said, this is all still very, very new. But typically what's coming into Hebron is within 2 or 3 or 400 miles.
To Ohio for all intents and purposes.
Correct. Which goes back to Eric's, statement. It's a lot of it's right here. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. The first one being is, so as you're sorting the plastics, you're running it all mixed. So for example, you're not targeting a specific type of plastic and then running that and then a second. So it's all just a conglomerate of plastics that create this cube that you're running.
That's, there's 2 things to consider. The commercial and industrial material which we're taking in now, we have a pretty primary grade, so it doesn't require sorting. We know what those grades are. Like I said, 90% of something will be 90% of another bale will know. I mean, from an industrial or commercial source will be HDPE. We know that that's good. All we have to do is shred that, and that's fine. When we start to bring in post-consumer in quantity, the reason we're not bringing in post-consumer now, nothing good happens to a post-consumer 327 bill when you sit it for a year. Okay, and we're not going to do that. So we don't have any post-consumer. Draws vectors, odors, co-tenants get really annoyed. But eventually, we see more post-consumer premium than post-industrial and post-commercial. At that point, we'll need to store. That's when we'll store it. But we're only going to be looking in those bales to pull out, again, the plastics that they're available.
Okay, so there isn't a particular recipe proportionately that you need X% of one particular, plastic versus another versus?
As far as, that's a great question, and that is something that I call it the art of running a plant. We're going to have to learn, that we are talking about recipes. Certain combinations of quantities of the different grades of plastic are going to be much more, yield, have a higher yield.
Right.
When we say yield, we're saying, okay, if I'm sending in a ton of densified material to the kiln, how much of that ton is actually being converted to hydrocarbon? You know, right now, a great yield for us is 80, 85, 90%. Okay? We can't necessarily use something that, let's say, and we received some of this material. The problem with plastic, there's very, very, very little really pure grade plastic. What there is pretty much already in the supply chain for mechanical recyclers, and PET is a perfect example. When you get into some of these more complex plastics, there could be, it could be 80%, let's say polystyrene,
Right.
but then 2% this, 5% that, 1% that one, and some of that can exclude that material from pyrolysis. Or only generate, say, a 40% yield, which we can't use, that's unacceptable for us. So eventually, we're gonna go back to our suppliers, try and share some of this advanced chemistry information with them to see how they can refine their process. I'll give you a perfect example. Everyone knows what Tide bottle looks like, right? That bright orange. So that's great H2P, right? The problem with it is that orange color, the pigment used to make that, is high in sulfites. I take and put too much of that into my system, it's going to result in sulfur emitting from my plant, which I can't have, just because of that orange color. And that goes for their labeling, and we're actively working with Procter & Gamble and some of the other brands, just say, hey, it's more difficult than you think. Because that orange Tide, that color is actually trademark, and we respect that, but that's where kind of getting the, EPR and all that. But that's how close we look at it.
Which then kind of ties to my second question, based on your recipe, that's gonna alter your output, so right now you're talking about a singular hydrocarbon liquid and then this char. I mean, depending on, how you, I guess you're gonna address that as you go,
Yes,
because
that's
you
what I
end up
refer to
having
as the art of
several-
running. So much of it is so undefined at this point, because large commercialization is lacking globally. There is actually a company doing it right now up in Akron, Ohio, that we send a lot of our feedstock to, and they're great partners for us. They're running 60 tons a day and they only do it 10 days every 4 days. We're gonna be running 300 tons a day, Monday through Friday. So it gives you some idea. They're doing it very successfully. They're generating a really high quality product, but they found the same thing. That the quality of inbound feedstock absolutely affects the quality and components of the pyrolysis oil. What we're also finding is that different companies that are off-taking or lined up to off-take our products, such as Shell, they have a set of specs already that they say, here's what your pyro needs to look like. And our partner company, they love their stuff. So we know that by following kind of that pattern, we should be generating a very high quality product.
I hate to cut
Yeah,
discussion.
we gotta call a timeout. I'm one complete presentation behind now. So, Jim, I really
We have a
appreciate
couple questions.
your time.
Chatted in.
I'll stick around.
If we can get time afterwards, we can follow up with the chatted in questions. I apologize to everybody, but we do have to try to respect other people's time and keep with the schedule here for a moment.
Thank you, Jim.
We-
Thank
we-
you.
It is fascinating. Appreciate your time. Technology is always interesting and everybody gets intrigued by
I'm
it. so.
pretty sad I had 20 minutes, so what's a minute? Thank you very much.
All right, I believe we have talking about some of the same subject. An online presentation.
Yes, and Susan, I apologize. Is your last name pronounced Thornlow?
That's correct.
Okay, good. And Susan is with US EPA. She's the senior chemical engineer. She was responsible for a report that USC put about recently about plastics management technologies, and she's here just to give us an overview of what they found. So Susan, take it away.
All right, thank you. And everyone can see my first presentation, I mean, my first slide?
Not yet.
Still,
Yes, I'm sharing. I'll stop sharing and.
We just see it
online.
I see it.
Okay.
No, we can see it there. We just can't see it up there. Ernie. They can see it online.
maybe you should say here.
I see it.
I see it
Okay.
too.
All right, thank you. Well, what I wanted to talk about today was the work that I did for Region 5 and a couple of other regions that were having a lot of inquiries to tribal lands and other communities about newer technologies for more recycling of materials that are in municipal solid waste. And so this is an area that I've worked on for most of my career, and there's been a lot of changes. And it really, when you're looking at different options, you really need to take a holistic, is there an issue or?
We're good.
Am I good to go? Okay.
You're good.
You really need a holistic assessment that looks at not only the impact to human health and the environment, but also the economics and you need to look at the energy balance. I mean, how much energy goes into separating out the material from the MSW waste stream, and then how do you process that, and then how do you what are all the steps in between? And so I'm a chemical engineer, and that's what we do is material and energy balances. And so for the report, which you're welcome to get a copy of, it's publicly available. What we did was we compared these newer technologies looking at digestion, pyrolysis, and gasification to either landfilling or waste to energy or mass combustion of that same material. So and so anyway, I'm with EPA's Office of Research and Development, and I'll be glad to make a copy of the report available. I know that Ohio already has it, so those of you that are guests, you're welcome to a copy of it. But how you need to look at municipal solid waste is a variety of materials in our waste stream, and there's some materials that when we recover, you get tremendous environmental benefit, like any kind of metals are just really beneficial to recover, and so the energy or effort associated with pulling those out of our waste stream or recovering them is well worth it, because you don't have the extraction and all the emissions from mining and all of that. And so it's really important. And so different materials are going to have different benefits, and you really have to look at a site-specific or a location-specific analysis to really know how this works best for your community. And typically regional solutions that aren't just this little community, but a larger group of people tend to be much more economical, as well as much more environmentally efficient. So that's a really good thing. And so this picture here is just showing what we did. We looked at, you can look at unsegregated waste and the different options for that, and discards. Our two discards options are either landfilling and waste to energy. And so in the about a decade ago, I did a paper with a colleague, Osgay Kaplan, and we looked at, is it better to burn or bury for clean electricity production? And so if you care about climate change, which I think most of us do, when you look at the amount of greenhouse gases per ton of waste managed, you're much better off for waste to energy than you are landfill. That doesn't mean that you don't look at all the pollutants. It's got to meet Clean Air Act requirements. In Europe and in some locations here in the US, they use data that's 24/7, so that at any time you can see exactly what's coming out of that plant and make sure that they really are being protective of human health and the environment. That's absolutely key. And in landfills, I'm also the air expert for landfills, and we've just done work here in Ohio as well as Michigan and Georgia and Alabama. And what we're finding is similar to results that were found in California, which is landfills are a larger loss of fugitive methane than we thought, or certainly it's been communicated by the by others. And so anyway, we're calling them, there's a Nature 2019 publication. We're going to be having another publication that takes all the data from the states that I just recently identified so that you can see what kind of loss we're seeing in terms of methane. And so they're doing it's airborne optical remote sensing. So if you care about climate, landfills, once waste is buried, you have waste, you have emissions for multiple decades. And then you also have to worry about the leachate. Whereas the waste to energy, the emissions are instantaneous, and you can look at any time the exactly what's coming out in that flue gas stream, and you have very extensive cleanup of that airstream before, to prevent any, minimize any impact to human health and the environment. And so anyway, you've got to look at what your options are and how they best compare for your community. And so we have this municipal solid waste decision support tool that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, that provides a way to look at all the different materials, how those, you got to collect, you got to transport, you got to look at all the steps in between before you process or landfill or combust. And with combustion, you're able to pull out metals, from the feedstock, but then you can pull out metals from that ash. So you can pull out both ferrous and non-ferrous. And so metals are just really important. And so Europe is much more, that's what they're going towards. They believe in using waste energy based on the data, and then looking at not having biodegradables go into landfills because of the methane concern. And they've been that way for a while, and hopefully we'll start thinking more about climate change and what we can do to get reductions. And so the report and the tool helps you look at options for your community. And as I said, it's better if you look at a larger geographical region than just a little community, because with a little community, you don't get the economies of scale. And in China, they are going to pyrolysis. They are able to get large amounts of plastics and able to manage this in a way that it's I have not seen performance data on air emissions. I'll be upfront about that. That was one of our biggest takeaways from our report, is there just isn't the performance data over time. But in the chat, someone mentioned about concern for emissions, and I mentioned that we have a notice for an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking on pyrolysis and gasification units. But the problem is we don't have the long-term performance data, and so maybe we can work with China or others that have that, but within the U.S. now we just don't have that. So then if you look at what are my options if I have this material, that material, that they're different options. And so I'm just trying to make the point that solutions are specific to the waste stream. This next slide is just letting you know that waste energy can take many, many forms, and none of these are like really new technology. They're just newly used here in the United States. And so traditional MSW combustion or thermal treatment is what they call it in Europe, it allows you to take the entire mass and then recover the fuel value. And what with plastics, they're based on fossil fuels. So if you burn it, you get that fossil fuel, you get that energy value back. Whereas if you landfill it, you don't. And they don't decompose, they don't form methane, they're just there. And so it's a real problem. Plastics, in my view, is probably our most difficult waste stream to try to manage. And so I'm not going to go through, we don't have the time to go through the different processes, but there's within this, there's different processes for how you go about pulling out those materials and then how you process them. And then the big difference is that what you get at the end may be different depending on what your needs are. Okay, let's go next. Oh, that's not there. Okay, and the different well, I just said this, different processes lead to different outputs, and there's a lot of steps, and there's and so when you're taking that into account, you can't just look at that end process and look at emissions. You need to look at all the steps so that you have a apples to apples comparison. And then the thermal processes are more prominent than chemical. And in Europe, they think of it as, recovery. And I know that in the US, there's been a lot of negativity or views towards thermal treatment. But if you look at the data over time, which I've done, and we've got data on 100% of the waste energy facilities, they're much better per ton of waste managed than if you compare that to a landfill. And I've got an ES&T publication on that. And so but you've got to think about the grand total and the different processes for thermal and chemical, and you've got to think about a material and energy balance around all of that. That's really important, and that's what the tool that I talked about is able to do. And so this tool is freely available. We're currently working with 10 different communities across the United States to compare how they're currently managing their waste, how they go about collecting, how they go about source separate. The one of the aspects of this tool that I really like, it allows you to optimize. So you can say, I want to, reduce, I want to minimize, what are my options for minimizing greenhouse gases? And typically it shows you all the materials where there's a huge environmental benefit for recovery. And they typically don't, you can say that combustion, I don't want to use combustion, but when you compare combustion versus landfill, if you care about climate change, it's much, much better. It's more expensive. And when you're comparing these things, you have to compare not just the environmental performance, and we're looking at life cycle trade-offs. So when you bury the waste, we're looking at the full life of the emissions. And so that's over many, many decades. So like if we bury our waste, it's really, future generations are having to deal with our emissions, which I don't think is okay. But it's much cheaper. And so people tend to go that route because there aren't the incentives currently to encourage people, and we're trying to do that, to encourage people to do solutions that are really better for the economy. They're more sustainable, they're more and protective of human health and the environment. It's got to be protective of human health and the environment. In some places where combustion's been used, they didn't have the expertise, they didn't have the knowledge base, and that's not in the US, that's in developing countries, to really make it so you have to have certain expertise, capabilities, the air pollution control, and you have to continually monitor it. And that's true for landfills or any process. So anyway, this is all about an apples and apples comparison. You can look at like just the collection. Is it better to barge? Is it better to rail haul? Is it better to semi-truck? And then you can look at, okay, what about rural regions versus urban areas versus suburban, or maybe I've got a community that's got all of the above. And so you can look at differences. Population density makes a big difference. How far you're having to drive to collect those recyclables, exactly how you go about doing that. I mean, some communities now are going to EV because although there's a higher initial cost, there's a lower cost based on the cost of fuel. And now we're looking at less, more electricity with less carbon. And so when you run this, you've got to look at that energy in the future will have less carbon associated with it, hopefully. And that certainly is the trend now. And so anyway, you have a lot of options on how you process, how you recycle, how you compost, and and the landfill, and there's differences in landfill. So anyway, it's a holistic assessment that looks at not just the environmental LCA life cycle assessment, environmental trade-offs, but also the economics and also EJ considerations. We've included our tool at EPA that allows you to look at on site-specific basis where, if you're thinking about placing a facility or for facilities that exist now, how does EJ play out? And we think this is very important that people need to be thinking about. And it also has heat maps so that when you're looking at this, you're not having to look at an array of numbers. You can see colors, and it's just easier to visualize and understand. And then it also has Sankey diagrams that looks at the material flows across the waste infrastructure, so you can see kind of what's driving that. And I know we don't have much time, so I'll speed it up. But what we did as part of this report is we did a survey of all the waste energy facilities across the country. We talked to a lot of people about these processes. We looked at gasification, pyrolysis, anaerobic digestion, and compared that to landfilling and waste to energy. And so, you know, obviously economics and environmental performance, as Lynn Anderson pointed out, you know, the issue with our ANPR is that there's not the long-term performance data, and we did not get good operational history data. And so within that report, there's context for the facility. So if you're thinking about, well, I want to do this, I'm thinking about this, whenever you're thinking about a new technology, you really need to look at where it's being used, how well did it go, and is it still operating or not? And what we found when we started this project and when we were finishing it up, there are a lot of facilities were closed for a lot of reasons. This is, you know, during COVID and a lot of different reasons, but a lot of times it was just economics. It just wasn't economical. And so that's why you really have to look at this, because, you know, everybody has, you know, we have scarce resources and we want to use them wisely. So anyway, this report, I've got a link here, and then just to think about greenhouse gases per plastic, you've got to look at this. The difference in these two charts is one is looking at greenhouse gas savings for different options based on what is recycled, what is actually recovered versus, you know, what's generated. And there's a lot more generated than what's actually being recovered. And so the difference in these other technologies versus, and like you would never put plastics in anaerobic digestion. So it, you know, the anaerobic digestion, you know, it's food waste, think food waste, but pyrolysis is plastics. And so if you compare that to waste to energy, you know, you don't have the issue of having to separate out and look at these different types of plastics. You can just, and so, you know, I would, you know, recommend that you consider that versus, you know, other options and do what's best for the community. And so when I was putting this together, I saw that there was just a recent article from NPR about recycling plastic. And it really is, in my view, the most difficult waste stream we have, or different material within MSW to manage. And glass, I heard earlier that they were talking about not recovering glass. I mean, you've got several in Ohio, several glass manufacturers that can take that. I mean, that would be, you know, terrible not to take that. And so anyway, you have to look at the materials and think about it holistically. And that's what we did through that report. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. And I hope I haven't gone on too long.
There we go.
No, ma'am, thank you very much. We are going to keep questions pretty short here because we are running behind this morning.
I understand.
We'll keep that to the council here ourselves. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I found it very interesting. That's a heck of a tool. I'm sure that was a very laborious process.
If we started this in the 1990s, and so it's been updated many, many times, and we've got our version 2 out. And I would love to work with your communities or state and using the tool. It's freely available, and we're in the process, as I said, doing 10 community case studies. We gladly do another community and help you when you're looking at these. You know, how do they compare?
Wonderful. I believe there's a link in your report, isn't there?
That's exactly correct. And I'm glad to share my presentation. It's been cleared for release. And so I'll send it to you, Ernie or Ernest, and I'm not going to stay on for your later meeting. I'm going to bow out, but do you need me to stay, or is it okay that I bow out?
No, Susan, we appreciate your spending the time with us. Yeah, if you send the slides to me, I will make them available to other members.
Excellent.
And so thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Absolutely. All right. Take care. Bye.
So next on the agenda, we have Scott Cisco, who is with the Auglaize County Solid Waste District. Scott is their coordinator. We've been trying to have a solid waste district on during each meeting just to give an overview of what they do, what they're like, so you can get an idea of the range of what solid waste districts look like around the state.
Rita having to go to a family commitment immediately after speaking, exclamation point.
Hang on just a second. Okay. Scott, we're going to try to keep moving here.
Sorry, Scott.
That's all right. Whatever works out for you.
We're good for you.
Okay. Okay, you ready? Okay. I'm Scott Cisco at Auglaize County Solid Waste. I'm the district coordinator. We have a small MRF here, but we're pretty unique as a MRF. We accept a lot of different materials that a lot of MRFs don't consider. We work a lot real closely with the industrial side of Auglaize County. So we do a lot of pickups at our factories, industrial facilities. As long as we can get something good, we'll take something that's bad. As long as we can maintain it, move it, that's our goal, is to help everybody out and to do whatever we can. And we found that we've been able to really dive into that part of the recycling besides the curbside. We have about 10 drop-offs in Auglaize County. We have 2 drop-offs in Mercer County and 3 curbside communities. And we'd love to add more to those curbside communities if possible. And knock on wood, but I hope I don't jinx myself here, but a lot of our drop-offs, we have no cameras. Do we get contamination? Absolutely, we get contamination. But it's not enough contamination to verify a camera. Most of our people that visit those facilities do a great job of recycling. They do a great job of putting things where they're supposed to be. There again, like I said, do we have problems? Sure, we get problems, but it's not to the point that we have to set cameras. We operate, well, years ago, we used to do a grant with Ohio EPA with our household hazardous program. And we operate our own household hazardous program Monday through Friday from 3 to 7. We handle light bulbs, batteries, paint, electronics, chemicals, TVs. And when we did the grants, it was a 1 event per year. And the next week, it was always like on Monday, you'd get a call, say, hey, I forgot about it. I had a soccer game. I had this going on. I had that going on. What am I going to do with this material? Well, what are you going to do with it? Well, you're going to hold it till next year, or I could maybe direct you to another county. But it got to be a real pain. And so we decided to do our own program, which worked out wonderful. We do charge for those materials that we do collect. And it pays for our program. By us having that program, we have found that more people has found us here for more recycling. Before I would get calls and people would bring things out and they said, we didn't even know you was here. We were out in the country and how long have you been here? I say to like the early 90s. And people just can't believe it. But once they get here, then all of a sudden you keep seeing more of them. So it's really been a good thing for us to start collecting household hazardous materials. Other materials that we do collect is cardboard. Wapakoneta, Pratt is located in Wapakoneta, and that's where we sell our cardboard and mixed paper. So we are very fortunate to have them in Auglaize County. So, and they're only about 10 miles away from us for deliveries. Mixed paper, besides mixed paper, we do shredded paper, news. We still have a local newspaper, and we do collect the news. We have butt rolls, 8 cartons, PET. I've been to several conferences and I've talked with Jeff Schneider from Rumpke, and I've always thought about saving 5s. And when I've heard that Rumpke was saving 5s, my conversation with Jeff, and Jeff was saying, hey, Scott, you need to move forward with them 5s, because I always thought that I wanted to collect them, but where's the home for them? And now that we found Pure Cycle, it's been a great thing for us here. We've announced that we are collecting 5s, so we get 5s. Early on, we was talking about Free Point. We do business with Free Point. I think both of those 2 places alone was a huge step for our small facility, because we are now able to take more material, recycle more material, and we have a home for them, either one of them. So it's been a really good thing for us. We do HD color and natural. We collect vinyl siding. We collect PVC. We collect rigid materials such as barrels, drums, part bends, ID rings, corrugated plastic, tubing, buckets, strapping, and super sacks. Tin and steel, aluminum, film, skids, plastic and wood. And so with all that material that we collect, we put in our trash can per week is probably somewhere between 2 and 3 yards, 2 or 3 yards of material per week is what we actually throw away into the garbage. So I feel like that's a pretty good number. We're hoping to be about 12 million pounds per year. This year is what we're hoping for. We are now doing a study on our facility to determine whether we need to add on or move our facility, because we are growing quite a bit, because our building is only about 10,000 square foot, and we're managing all this stuff in a 10,000 square foot facility. If you come to our facility, when you drive in, you'll see 15 semi-trailers parked out front. And as we make our material, the trailers are brought in, we load our material up, and they're stationed on that trailer until it's ready to be moved or sold. So, I mean, those trailers are out there are our buildings, and they do an okay job, but we need a bigger footprint here, more real estate. Our struggles for our facility is basically our sort line needs. We're like everyone else. We're looking for people to work. Here in Auglaize County, we have several factories and industrial facilities that they are looking for workers, and they're paying way more than what we can pay. Usually, I mean, that's probably our biggest struggle. And right now we cannot accept any more material off our, that's why we really haven't done more with our curbside programs or any more drop-offs, because the material that we are getting, we can't sort it fast enough. And we are now looking into robotics. Is that the answer? I think it's going to help quite a bit. But I know that we have to do more things to our sort line to get to that point. We also have about nine workers in this department, besides myself, and we have 4 drivers, and those are a problem. We have 3 Packer trucks, 2 semis, 2 roll-off trucks, and so keeping drivers, CDL drivers, is a problem. So we're faced with that. So like I said, we're just like everybody else. That's what we're trying to fix. We would, yesterday I went to another eco development for the styrofoam. I went there. We're excited about adding maybe a styrofoam piece to it, which I know Freepoint, they do take styrofoam. But I think that, you know, as we get more into it, I mean, that'd be another avenue for that kind of material. And I think it would work out with this just fine. Most outside of the household hazardous material, that is the only thing that we charge in Auglaize County. Not to say that maybe next year, maybe we'll have to charge, but all our services besides our household hazardous is free. So if you don't take advantage of it, then there's a problem. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't take advantage of it, because it's a free service. So, and I don't know, I tell people out there, you tell me one thing that's free anymore. Just tell me one thing that's free that people will come to your door and pick things up. There's not very much of that around. So we still are a free service, and we're hoping to continue it. But, you know, with the fuel prices and the cost of the equipment, I just don't know how long that can happen. But at this point, we're still doing it. With that, if anybody's ever interested or in the area, and we'd be glad to have you come through our facility go through a small tour of what we do. If you'd like to get a better firsthand look, but that's pretty much in a nutshell what we are. Any questions?
Council have questions for Scott? Scott, we've asked you to do a lot recently, and so we really appreciate you taking the time to be on council to give your presentation.
Sure.
We visited Scott not too long ago, and it's a good visit. So if anybody, take him up on his offer, because Auglaize is a fairly rural county that has a really good program. So we're happy to have Scott on board here.
Attorney, if I may.
Yes.
I began my waste career back of a recycle wheel in Wapakoneta, Ohio.
Oh, really?
Is that Bob?
Eric Palmer.
That's Eric Palmer, Scott.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you very much, Scott. We appreciate your time.
Okay. Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
If it's okay with our grant people, we're going to move a couple things around just so we can get through what we need to do. So the first thing is that we have the MAC is required every year to submit a report to Ohio's General Assembly. And this is the last meeting that we'll have before next year. And so we wanted to go on and try to get that ready to go. I sent a draft of it out. The draft has not been reviewed by our director's office yet. So there could be some minor, the last time that they reviewed it, they only made a couple typo changes and there wasn't any other major changes. So just be aware that there could be some small changes after today, but I would let you know what those are.
The last time we approved that with what? The condition that it was reviewed by the chairman and the vice chair after the fact.
Yes, correct. So, did everybody get a chance to read the report? Anybody have any issues with it? Yes,
I
Kimberly.
think we're missing the piece where we had our subcommittee working on ways to make the grant more marketable.
That was last year.
But then the action the director took was this year.
Okay, we can put that in.
So I think it might be important just to, if I'm a legislator, I'm always interested in efficiency and are there fewer roadblocks to people accessing government? Just a thought. That was the only thing.
I'll work with DEFA on getting a summary for that. Any other discussion on the report?
If I may make a recommendation and a request for a motion that we amend that and Steve and I review it and then put it forward after we get that done.
I'll second that.
Well, I need a first. 'Cause
Well, I
can't
thought
make
you
it.
just did.
I can't make it.
Was that a motion?
Yeah. First, I need a second. Thank you, sir. All opposed? Thank you.
I say all opposed.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go. It was easier. I got used to it on the computer screen, because then everybody didn't talk at the same time. Okay,
Can we do the election of officers next?
exactly. So I think the last couple of times we've had these discussions, it's kind of been a voluntold unless somebody wants to be more involved. Is everybody willing to stay where they are? Okay, anybody else have any wants to put your hat in the ring? Okay,
Steve, you're retired. You're supposed to be letting go of things.
I will willingly let go. Yeah. I mean, really, if anybody wants to step in and.
I'm only joking with you, Steve.
Oh,
We're
thank you,
happy,
Rick.
we're happy for you to still be chair.
Now he has time.
exactly.
Chairman,
So-
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Steve Sargent as vice chair of the committee and Jennifer Fenderbosh as the secretary.
Thank you,
I'll second that.
thank you. All in favor?
You were all feeling better about it.
Who was section?
Kimberly. Okay,
So, if it's all right with everybody, do we have time to go on and go through the grant update or?
Let's do.
yeah,
Okay, Marie, do you want to come do the presentation? Or do you want me to go through it for you?
I'll just go through it. And I know I have to leave more of my time today because offer of the group. So really the main one, you can see most of these. I currently, if you want to skip down to a couple of them, to the big one thing over.
Do you want me to skip,
Dates,
skip forward?
skip down to the dates. Right here. The grant opened on November 7th. We had a kickoff on the 8th. We had about 174 participants. And of the 174, about 70% of them had never applied for a grant before. So that was very encouraging. Generally, our larger numbers in January when we kick it off again, because the deadline's in February and a lot of people like to procrastinate and wait till the last minute to put in their application. So we get a lot more people usually in the January webinar. But we have really good numbers for the November ones. We're very excited about that. But the deadline is February 3rd. We do what we call a draft. We'll take a look at your application prior to the deadline. So we have that date up there as well. I think it's January 10th. Grant closes on February 3rd and 20th. It is considered the 20th cycle. Do expect to have about 4 million, maybe a little over dollars to award. We did have one new aspect this year. And it was the water bottle refilling stations that we talked about a little bit. We opened that up and in what we call a paper application. It was really a Word document. They could submit it online to us. We were asked by the director, was an incentive by the director to open this up and spend some money on it. We weren't sure how many applications we were going to get. We ended up getting we got over 200. we were able to fund 94 and award 205 schools with water bottle refilling stations. We awarded close to a little under 500,000. We were really proud of that and how quickly they caught on board. So we opened it up in the application, so schools can now apply, which will, they'll have the same deadline as February 3rd as the other ones. So we're looking to get a lot more applications this year than we've ever gotten because of that brand new component. But that's pretty much the only thing that's brand new in the recycling one. We do have 6 applications in already, which is record for us. Because again, people like to wait till December or February to apply. We were really excited to see that people are getting in there and using the online application. But again, the water bottle refilling station will be online this year with the other ones. Skip down, Ernie. The other thing I wanted to mention, it was mentioned earlier today, yesterday was National Recycling Day. We do have an event every year, which we have a national recycling art show. The last 2 years it's been virtual. We reach out to students across the state of Ohio, state employees, and say, hey, give us some art, we'd like to display it. So there's a link down, can't hardly see, it's really small. But if you want to take a look at it, it's about a 4-minute video. We encourage you to take a look at it. It doesn't say exactly where the students are from, because we have to protect who they are and what they're doing. But we've had some really cool things. Next year for 2023, we'd like to make it in person again. The first one was in person. We have applied for the Urban Art Center, which is across the Galleria, where you come in here. And if we're able to, we've applied an application, put in an application. So hopefully they do it the whole month of November. But we'll see what we can get. We have to be approved and the board has to approve us. And we haven't gotten their recommendation back whether or not we've been approved. But if we do, we have to have quite a bit of art because when it's on exhibit like that, you have to take up some space. It'll be their hallway, which is a pretty large area. So we're hoping to get some more art that way. But if you have the opportunity, please take a look at it. We launched it yesterday for National Recycling Day next year. So we had quite a few schools. I think we had 42 pieces of art submitted. So we have to get that movie really excited with some of the work. But you have to remember some of it's elementary kids, what they do with it. So there's some good things and there's some like, what is that? But we try to title them and kind of say what kind of materials they use, whether they use magazines or whatever. So if you get an opportunity, take a moment and check it out. And I think next is Dave.
All right, well, I'll be quick because I want to talk less than already. Real quickly, the slide before, when Ernie sends these out as a PDF, like that, the link, the video is embedded in that front. So you'll be able to, or you just search or how to get a YouTube page there. So thanks, Ernie. So real quickly, speaking of National Recycling Day or week or yesterday, yesterday we found out that we've talked about in previous meetings the bipartisan infrastructure funding. It was released yesterday. So we're kind of scrambling here. So we threw in the slide. So again, when the PDFs are made, like those are the blue text are links to like the different programs. So there is the SWIFR. I love that one. It's the Solid Waste Infrastructure and Recycling Grant Program. That's one of the funding mechanisms. And then the other is the Recycling Outreach and Education Grant Program. And they've broken up there's 3 types of programs. One's really we're concerned about in Ohio or Impact Ohio, the State and Territorial Grant Program, which is there's a deadline where we'll have to decide if we have an intent to participate. We're still discussing that internally, like from our we being Ohio EPA, sorry. And then there's the Political Subdivision Grant Program, which is like everybody else, and like your communities, your solid waste management districts, those type things. There's the Political Subdivision Grant that focus more on infrastructure, pure infrastructure, where the State and Territorial Grant Program is more about programmatic data, measurement, outreach, like studies, market development, all that. So we have some homework to do if we want to, if you send something to USCDA Region 5 and intend to participate by the 15th. The Political Subdivision Grant, there, you can see the applications due by January 16th. Same thing with that Recycling Education Outreach Grant Program. That actually is for state, nonprofit, and public-private partnership too. So that again is on due the 16th. The good thing is there's webinars for all of these. So that link takes you to like a Zoom page where they have times either it looks like it's a trend like 2 to 3 p.m. or an afternoon. And then if you can't do the afternoon, there's 6 to 7 time slot where they run the webinars again. And they start November 29th, and they're, some get into like the actual application and some get into like the procurement sub awards and answer questions. So they're all pretty much running from November 29th into early January. And that's it. I mean, we have more information. We're still trying to kind of gather everything together, meet internally, see what next steps, but we definitely will be pushing this out to the solid waste management districts and our grant stakeholders and other folks to like, hey, here it is. And decide what, what role it's gonna be. The bigger picture, I know that I think for the Swiffer started that one, they want to fund up to about 25 projects for this cycle. And the goal through the whole country, but the goal is at least get one in each of the regions. So there's 10 US EPA regions. We're in region 5. So, the goal is at least to have one project funded. That's all we know, because we, like you said, there's webinars coming. We'll be talking with our region 5 counterparts. So that's all
Thanks, sir.
We'll know more, and we'll send out more comes around. We'll make sure we send it via Ernie that they get it out to NMAC to keep everybody up with it.
Ernie, do you want to or Steve, give a quick update on the cardboard initiative?
Well, I'll keep it like to 1 minute. Just, one of the things in the state plan that we had as the market development goal was to focus on fiber. And there are a bunch of paper mills in Ohio and around us that are clamoring for more cardboard. So we've been meeting with those mills to try to figure out what might be possible in Ohio. And we're going to be reaching out to solid waste districts here that are within a certain radius of those paper mills to see if they're willing to be involved in discussions. There are lots and lots and lots of possibilities for how the mills would be willing to work with solid waste districts and communities to get more cardboard recovered. So we're going to be reaching out. That's the next step. And at the next meeting, then, we'll have more to share with you. But we're in the process right now of meeting with those mills. It's been very successful. We're very happy so far.
All right, I believe just as a ending piece here, if anybody has any, I don't know if we have any guests here or anything like that had any questions as we got.
Or virtually, if you want to address Mac verbally, if you can just chat in and let us know, and then you can unmute yourself.
We've got just a couple minutes here left. Well, pause on that for a second, Kimberly.
Sorry, we went really fast to the US EPA thing. Mr. Chairman, do you think it would be appropriate for this body to make a formal motion to encourage Ohio EPA to go ahead in the affirmative with the intent to participate? I mean, I would really hate to see the department leave any money on the table after people fought really hard to get this in the infrastructure bill. How does everybody feel about that? I mean, I would hope the director is all in, but if you need like a formal go for it.
What are we not leaving monies on the table about? We are unclear as a guest.
We're talking about the grant program in the US EPA, which was just talked about. I personally don't know that we have enough information to even know what. I can't support it because I don't even know what we're talking about yet. I know there's a pot of money there. But we talked to the US EPA and said, are they going to give it to the state to supplement the grant program? Are they going to give it to the cities to do curbside programs? Are they going to give it to private entities as a pass through? We don't even know what it is.
They have 3 parts. I'm sorry, may I speak, Chair? So our community has hired a third party as specialist attorneys to go through these bipartisan because they are so layered. And with every bipartisan that's being, whatever the topic is, we're talking recycling here versus bridges and streets elsewhere, right? I have to deal with. Every single part of it has, some of it's for municipalities, some of it's for the state. Then the state has 2 options. The state can say, hey, this is our program, we're going to be putting it through MMAC, we're going to be putting it through ODNR or whatever. Or they can go through the regional, like NOAC. And that decision is what the state has to make and let all of us know. But the ones that are going right to the municipalities, every municipality is grabbing whatever they can. I agree with Kimberly. We don't know what those monies are, but I think we need to be able to not leave any money on the table.
Exactly. It would be silly. So
Oh, yeah, we're meeting internally. We talked about, when we knew it was coming, heard it all come out last winter. And we talked about what could be done and what that, but we're also be careful because we know some of the funding will be probably better served locally, and that's the raw infrastructure. But we also want to make sure, everybody's on the same page. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to look at it. We didn't want to commit to say, hey, we're going to do this because, in reality, like the role of the state funded level, it's going to be more about data studies, data collections and studies and trends and all that versus, the infrastructure part is going to be more at the local level.
Are you recommending a motion from the, I mean, that what you're saying, or right now?
I mean, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, maybe it's too early, or,
Well, the intent to participate is due December 15th. We're not gonna meet again. So
Dave, I know that we're meeting in terms.
Yeah.
Talk about this. Is it after that meeting, it'll be possible to now engage in solid waste district for me?
Yeah, I think there'll
Talk
be
more
some
about
follow-up, but for sure, because we got a month, less than a month.
Right.
And I know the deadline for fast approaching.
Yeah.
If we have some holidays coming up, obviously, and all that good stuff. I mean, we can commit to, after our internal meeting, to engage with MAC as well as the solid waste districts and indicate, listen, this is really where EPA's position is and this is what we're going to probably for.
Okay.
I hear that all the time from my lovely wife. Never leave money on the table. I got that.
your wife is just smart.
And it really is something that fits within our strategic plan and what we do as Ohio EPA, we'll go after. But if it fits better at the local level, then that's what we'll be encouraging the solid waste districts and community.
I can just add on, sorry, but just to add on to what was said, US EPA sent a letter to the governor's offices across the country. So the governor's office is aware of it. They notified our director. So she's very interested. So we're kind of in a quick exploratory stage ourselves to brief her. She's been asked to brief in the next 2 weeks. So just to let you know that she's very interested in learning, is this an opportunity for the state, or is it more efficient to let the funds, depending on how that plays out, to go local?
Mr. Chairman, if I could add on that, in talking back here, not everybody understands what a regional means. So there are funding filters that many communities, like we belong together in a large district region that's called NOACA, okay? And those funds that they're going to be distributing out to us, whether they're transportation funds or any other kinds of funds, first has to be accepted by the state. It doesn't come directly from the feds. And I think a lot of people think that because you are a municipality or a township, that you're going to be getting the money directly from the feds. It's going to solve all problems. That's not the case. The state has to accept some of it, so it will go to the regional funders so that the townships, I don't want to speak for the townships, but for the townships and the municipalities can apply for it. Then there are others that the municipalities, the townships can apply for it. But quite frankly, the smaller municipalities are not sophisticated enough to be able to work those grants. So we're competing against the very large three, the C3, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cincinnati and Cleveland, along with, then the second level. So please have some of it accepted by the state so it can go down to the regionals. Thank
Glad I
you.
brought this up.
Good. And the RFA, like on the length of 59-page RFAs are there for reading pleasure. Just
It's
like
crazy.
it's like, yeah, and the instructions for how to submit through the grants.gov, the whole process. But yeah, but like thanks, Joe. Thanks for speaking up about that, because internally we're still kind of because we kept hearing, it's gonna come out in, October and then November. And the good news is this is the first of one cycle. There's like more years to come, and I think a lot of them will get ironed out, because I know these two grant programs were run by parts of UCPA that they're new grant programs. So we're,
Brand new.
with anything else, or
Okay.
all the logistics and administrative stuff. So.
We have a hand up. So Lynn, do you want to go ahead?
I just wanted to seek clarification on what this US EPA money is being given toward.
Lynn, we had a 30-minute presentation from the US EPA about this when they were trying to figure that out. And it's about infrastructure for recycling, I think, but there's a 50-page document that tries to explain that. So it's more than a 2-second conversation. I believe we have a link in the presentation that Dave did. So you could find more information there when Ernie gets it posted or passed back out.
Lynn, I'll send you the link to it directly so that you can access it before I put the presentation up on our website.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments for the good? We're running about 10 minutes late, which isn't too bad compared to where we were in the middle. I appreciate everybody moving things along and listening. I found it very interesting and educational. Again, our goal as a group is to support diversion and solid waste management in the state. So we're trying to figure out how we can support the infrastructure that currently exists, is proposed to exist, and that we need to be able to utilize to the best of our ability. So appreciate everybody's time. I think it's time to go home. We can, if you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we have, or Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, as I think folks know, there's a post earlier, I haven't read that one yet, but we did celebrate our 50th anniversary just last month. And the agency's doing a lot of social media outreach. The agency in general, the divisions, and our division, Materials and Waste Management, is next up to the spotlight in December. James Lee's with our Public Interest Center is kind of spearheading that. We're having a lot of social media, I guess, a blitz during December. We'll have our staff out in the field here in the office talking about the important work that they do and why it's important to communities and to the public. James came today to kind of see if anyone here, because you all play a very important role, not just in MMAC, but in your roles at your respective organizations. And so I'll certainly invite any of you, whether here today or talk more with James. What we're doing essentially are like 45-second videos just to talk about, what part you play in this important aspect of environmental protection. So that's my pitch, but James, your show. So,
Am I allowed to volunteer somebody?
yeah, everybody picks one person.
Kimberly.
Well, I don't know if you all have subscribed or otherwise follow Ohio EPA on social media. If you don't, both from a personal level and from your respective organizations, I would encourage you to do that, particularly as in this next month, as you said, we're going to be focusing on the work that our own division of materials and waste management and the work that you folks do as well. I think that probably there's a knowledge gap there with the public in terms of everything that goes on in terms of not only the waste material, but also the recycling material. We're hearing about some technologies and things along those lines as well. So with that in mind, I know that we have 2 or 3 folks in particular that we would like to talk to afterward. Promise it won't take more than 5 more minutes of your time. You want to get to lunch, but if there's any others among you that want to help us capture a little bit of video, focusing on what you do, either stick around or otherwise get us a business card or send Joe an email, and we'll see about how we might be able to use that in our campaign here in the month of December. We're trying to get it all in can before the start of the month.
That is just add, I frequently have to, even though I've been doing it for 19 years here, I just explain to my kids or my wife or my family, what the heck do you do, right? So I don't know if any of you get those questions from time to time too. But when you think about it, it's really, again, the public may not know what we do and why it's so important. And when I say we, I mean that collectively, and you all know from this experience, but all the things that we do, it's all about collaboration. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of speak to that. But it also is just an opportunity to think about, who's the target audience? It could be a kid, right? To inspire them to do something in this arena, whether it's with our agency or with one of your organizations and, playing that role in environmental protection, sustainability, and whatever perspective it may be that you offer. But it could be that kid, it could be just the general public, again, educating them on the work that we all do collectively. So again, encourage y'all to take the opportunity to sync up with James and be a part of this outreach.
We want to help tell the story of the good work that you all are doing. And December in particular is the month when we're going to be focusing on that. So.
James already made me do one this morning.
You did.
Right on the spot.
That's right. It's cold. I don't know if you knew that was coming, but Ernie knocked it out in one take, but I insisted on two just because. Yeah. Sure. So do these folks who in particular do they know?
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, I need, at a minimum, I need you and the vice chair, and one of the solid.
There's only one. Oh, no, I guess there's two.
Get two. One of the solid waste district directors.
Or both.
Or both. Take 45 seconds. So we've committed at least 3 people. If not one. Please.
And I already told Mike, if he wants, we're going about to his site that's here in town. But if you want to put the spot, that's fine. So,
I see that. We can stand side by side. You can take 20 seconds and I'll take 22. All right. Well, that's a after the fact thing. I think unless there's other conversations or questions, it's time for us to adjourn. I need
Make a
a
motion
first,
to adjourn.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's go home. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas.